Hi, welcome to Power Golf, Power Fitness. My name's Bill Ebersol, and today we're going to be analyzing the current number one ranked long driver in Europe. His name is James Tait. James Tait is also a YouTube creator. He's got an excellent channel on YouTube called Bunkered Golf, and they do all kinds of cool things on there. They review clubs, they have lifestyle stuff, they have player logs, and some golf instruction as well. James, being one of the top long drivers in the world, has got a lot of knowledge as far as golf is concerned. So definitely a guy you should. Definitely a channel you should check out, and a guy you should listen to when it comes to golf and in all its forms. So James, like I mentioned, is the number one long driver in Europe. He probably averages over 150 miles an hour club speed and over 220 miles an hour in ball speed. That is in comparison to a PGA Tour average PGA Tour player. They're at 115 and 172. So we're talking over 30 miles an hour faster than your average PGA Tour player club head speed, and 50 miles an hour plus faster in ball speed. The top guys in the PGA Tour are probably right around 130 and in the 190s when it comes to ball speed. So he still far exceeds even the biggest hitters on the PGA Tour. So we're going to kind of get into why that is. How we're going to do that is we're going to use what's called the Smart to Move 3D force plates. I was at the World Championship last year, the World Long Drive Championship, and James was nice enough to get on these force plates, and we got some data. So I'll do a brief explanation as to how these force plates collect the data and what's special about this data. So the three main data points and forces that the 3D force plates collect. There's three forces. One is called lateral force, which is essentially moving your body parallel to the ground, and for golf purposes, that would be moving towards the target and away from target. Imagine you're just shifting your hips left and right. That would be the example of a lateral force production. The next force production we're going to look at is what's called vertical torque. Simplify vertical torque. What that means is how well you're rotating. It's pretty obvious golf is a rotational sport. You have to rotate to get that club behind you, and then rotate again to get that club back in front of you to hit the ball. Vertical torque measurement will tell us how well he's doing that. The third force we're going to be taking a look at is called vertical force. To simplify that, just think of jumping. You're putting force into the ground underneath you, and that propels your body upwards. How that works in the golf swing, we'll get into that later. What's important, why all three of these forces are important. The order of how these forces happen is important as well. Ideally, you want to start with the lateral force first, and then you go to the rotational force, vertical torque second, and then the vertical force third. So I like to say bump, rotate, and jump. Bump, rotate, and jump is the kind of the way I describe it. Lateral force is a little bump, then you rotate, and then you jump. And if you do those three things in the right order and at the right times, you're well on your way of making a good golf swing. The guys men and women I'll be analyzing on this channel mostly will have have that part down. Their sequence is going to be really good, and the amount of force they produce will be insane. So let's get started with James here. First let me describe the screen, what you're looking at. So those three forces are represented by those squiggly lines at the bottom there. The black one is the lateral force. The yellowish tinted one is the rotational force, and then the orange/red tinted one is vertical force. So the bump is black, the rotation is yellow, and the jump is reddish. on the upper, and you'll see that that's what those squiggly lines are. Just to the right of those squiggly lines, there's going to be numbers that represent those three forces. On the top, it says Fy, that's the lateral force. In the middle, that says Tz, that is the vertical torque or rotational force. And then Fz is the numbers represent the amount of jumping force or vertical force presented. Above that, you'll see a digital representation of the force plates James is standing on. There's some arrows. Those arrows kind of point which direction his feet are kind of pressing. Just think of like if you see the arrow pointed in one direction, the foot is pointed in the other. The foot is being pushed in the other direction. That yellow arrow in the middle represents the center of pressure. So if he's got more pressure on the lead leg, that yellow arrow is going to be closer to the lead foot, and vice versa for the trail foot. Just below left of those plates, you'll see some numbers. Those numbers represent, the red number is representing the amount of weight distribution, and we're just talking about percentages here, not total, not pounds or kilograms or anything, just the percentage. So at this point, he's got 56% of his weight on his lead leg and 44% of his weight on his trail leg. The lead leg is blue, the trail leg is red. And then, of course, left of that, you're going to see the digital, not digital, you're going to actually see the actual swing, the actual video, the video of James swing. And we're going to be able to slow this down as much as we need to. The first thing I'm going to do is actually just hit play. And the reason why I want to hit play for James in particular is James does something with his backswing. It's very unique. He may have the fastest backswing I've ever seen. I'll just hit play real quick and you can see what I mean. That total swing probably lasted less than a second, and that backswing was probably about half of that. And of course, the downswing is usually, the backswing is usually about 2/3 of it, and then the downswing is about 1/3. So his swing probably, like I said, lasted less than a second. Most people's golf swings are about a second and a half. Now, why is that a thing? Why would someone but swing backwards so quickly? The reason is the more force you can produce in your backswing, you're just going to have to produce more force to bring the club back in front of you. So if you're creating a lot of force to bring that club behind you, in order to change the direction, you're going to have to produce a lot of force to bring it back in front of you again, and that translates into club head speed. It's kind of a secret of the pros. Fast backswing equals club head speed. Now, of course, you need to do this in control. Your club and the shaft still has to hit the right positions. You can't just be doing it willy-nilly, have the club fly everywhere, getting a bunch of bad positions, and you're just, if you can make a good, fundamentally sound backswing and do it fast, it's going to gain you speed. I'm going to show a few things here that are unique about James' swing here. So we're going to get started, and the first thing I'm going to show you is just take a look at about 6 inches away from the ball, how much shaft bend he has. That is incredible. To be able to produce enough force to actually bend the shaft within 6 inches from the ball, that basically means he is basically taking away that club really quick. And that, like I said, and he does it under control. He does it with good positions and with a good golf swing. So it translates into a lot of speed. I'm going to point out a number here to the right. It says TZ minus 84. Now that's the torque. All the minus means is that's the force is being produced away from the golf ball. It's being produced to basically rotate backwards. And that's all that means. And then when he starts producing counter rotation to produce it going forwards, that number is going to become positive. What we're going to look at is the peak of those two numbers there. So his negative peak, minus 84, is that good or bad? it's amazing. The reason why it's amazing is I would say most PGA professional golfers at this point probably in the 40s. Um, and then on their downswing, PGA's professionals usually Smart to Move has a number about 86 that says if you can hit that number, you're creating a good amount of vertical torque. He's hitting 84 on his backswing. That's insane. So we can see why he's able to bend that shaft so quick. He's already producing 84 what they call newtons of mass. I don't know what newtons of mass is. I don't think I really need to explain it to you. What we need to have is basically benchmark numbers, and I have those. So when I say benchmark numbers, like say what an average PGA Tour player does versus a long driver, that kind of thing. And I let me tell you, he's probably about twice the force of what a PGA Tour player would be at this point. And he's peaking at about 84. He's just within 6 inches of the ball. So he went from 0 to 6 inches, and he's already peaking at 84 on rotating his body away from the ball there. Now, when it comes to positive forces, there is a sequence that needs to happen, and it is, I think I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. The sequence is lateral first, lateral peak positive force first, lateral peak vertical torque, rotation second, and then, no, I'm sorry, not lateral rotation, but peak lateral force first, that's the bump, peak rotation second, that's vertical torque, and peak vertical force third, that's the jump. So bump, rotate, jump in that order. And believe me, James has got that order down perfectly. So let's move on to his peak lateral force here. It's at about 18%. Oh, let me backtrack just a touch here. You'll notice that when he bumps away from the ball, he has a negative lateral force. That basically means he's just kind of pushing his body away from the target just to get the club started. And literally within that first 6 inches, like I said before, he's now at what's called positive lateral force, which is he's net pressing more towards the target than away. How's he doing that? Why does that even matter? Well, what he's essentially doing is he's got his trail shoulder and his trail hip, and he's he's producing force under that trail leg to make that trail shoulder and trail hip rotate towards the target, which in turn rotates the front side of his body away from the target. So that's why that's happening. Most amateur golfers, they don't really rotate that much in the backswing. It's more just they're just kind of leaning into the trail side, and then they get parked over there at the top up until that point, and they don't get positive until they're starting their downswing when it comes to lateral force. That's way too late. Kind of one of the secrets of the pros, other than that fast backswing, is to start that positive lateral force going towards the target very early. And what that does is that gets you in a better position at the top, and you're already pushing in the right direction at that point. So here you are. Here he is at peak lateral force. You can see his hands are high-ish. They're not super high. He's got a lot of elbow bend, which kind of makes him not look as high. The elbow bend aspect, I'm not going to be critical of that. That's my backswing. I kind of do the same thing. There's a lot of great players with a decent amount of elbow bend at the top. I think the reason why he may have a lot of elbow bend is because of that fast backswing. He's doing it with a very relaxed arms and wrists, so they're a little softer, so they're just going to bend at the top. Having a ramrod straight left arm at the top can be beneficial. We'll get into that in maybe different videos. It can increase something what's called a moment arm, which gives you a little bit more leverage. But it can also be not beneficial if when your arm is straight, it kind of restricts you from making a big backswing. So James is basically, he makes a huge backswing. You can see his shoulders are turned probably about 130 degrees. His hips probably not more than 45, 50. So there's got a big separation there between his hips and his shoulders. They call that the X factor. You can see a whole lot of stress on the shaft up here as well, again, because of that fast backswing. His hands are just slightly above his head. I wouldn't say his swing is flat or overly upright. It's probably, kind of neutral in that respect. But anyways, it's still a great backswing. Very, as you can see, very much under control, even though it was very rapid. You can see how his trail leg is still angled towards the target there. He doesn't have his knee outside of his ankles and that kind of thing, or his hips. His hip is inside of his ankle. His knee is inside of his ankle. It's a great position here at the top. So here he is, peak lateral force 18. Comparing that to PGA Tour players, that's about the same. PGA Tour players are right around 20, between 18 and 22 or something like that. I think James' probably peak lateral force, and I'll explain in a minute, is probably a lot higher than that. And the next few frames, I'll explain why I think that. If you look at that, if you look up at the video and you look under his trail leg, that force plate, and he does this, watch how much that trail leg, how much that force plate slips underneath his foot there. Now, this is my fault, not his. This was at the World Long Drive Championships last September and up in Denver, Colorado. Now, it had rained a whole bunch a couple of days before the Champions, like 5 inches of rain in a day. So the ground there was really soft. So in order for me to use these force plates, I had to put something hard under them, or else they would just sink into the ground. So that's why that board's there. Now, James, because he produces so much force under his feet, I didn't know this at the time, but he ripped, there's each of these force plates has 4 little feet underneath it. And then there's, rubber pads under those for traction. He ripped the rubber pads off those feet. And I didn't even know he had done this. And I had people who hit after him. Those force plates did not move around. He's the only guy who got this to happen. And it's because of the unique way he swings. And we'll get to that in a second there. So here he goes. The lateral force starts at about 18. And again, you can see how that thing slips out from under him a little bit, and yet even though that happens, he still gets a peak vertical torque number at about 164. Peak vertical torque for PGA Tour, I would say, is between like 85 and 120. So he's a good 20, 30, 40% higher than what a PGA Tour player would be at this point. And I'm guessing it would even be higher I know it would be higher if that trail force plate wasn't slipping around beneath his feet, because he's trying to rotate hard and that thing's giving way. So that's going to definitely make, make those numbers a little bit lower than they should be. And even with that happening, he's still way above what a PGA Tour player would be. And I'll also note he's about a third of the way into his downswing, and this looks like the typical top of the backswing for a good golfer, PGA Tour player. And he's already a third of the way into the downswing, and he's producing, a peak vertical torque it far exceeds most PGA Tour players. Most PGA Tour players, their peak vertical torque hits about there. His is hitting here, so that's amazing. The next thing we're going to move on to is vertical force, the jump. So we had the bump, then the rotate, and now the jump. Now his vertical force, it hits right here with his arm parallel to the ground. The club's still way up in the air. That's a great spot very early. I've seen earlier, and I'm guessing James might have been earlier again, probably because of that thing slipping around under his trail foot. But he's at 201%. That is probably about the same as a PGA Tour player does. I'm guessing he'd probably be like 220 to 240 if that thing wasn't slipping underneath him. But he's such a great athlete, it doesn't even matter. He still center punches this ball and carries over 400 yards. It was at elevation, but it was a sight to behold. when we scroll through, you're going to see, it's from this angle. You'll be able to see how well he hits the ball. It's obviously not directly behind the ball, but you'll get a good indication. So again, that the peak positive forces all happened at the right time. It started with the peak bump, lateral, peak rotate, vertical torque, and then ended with peak vertical force, the jump. So they all happened at the right time. They all happened pretty early. And I'm going to show you one more force really quick. And this is what's called negative lateral force. He's at if you look at those black numbers over there on the right, it says minus 32. I've also had, I had another measurement of him. He's at minus 38. The highest I've measured other than James has probably been around 20. So if he's at minus 38 and every other people are at 20, he's almost twice as hard. And I'm talking about other long drivers. I'm not talking about just like a PGA Tour guy. I'm talking about other long drivers who are like, at this point, minus 20. And what this is this is called the braking force. And what braking force, think of a car. And imagine you're driving a car and you hit the brakes. But imagine as you were driving this car, you did not have your seatbelt on. You got a bunch of stuff just loose in the cabin there, stuff in your back seat, stuff on your passenger seat. None of it's strapped down. And you slam on your brakes. What's going to happen? Everything is going to go forward and slam into that windshield. So what braking force is in a golf swing is essentially he's slamming on the brakes, and then those arms, the hands, and the club are going to fly and smash through that windshield. So basically, James can beat the brakes off the ball, is what I like to say. I'll use another analogy when it comes to the car. Remember, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit about starting these forces early. Now, imagine you have a car and it's broken down on the side of the road, and for some reason you have to push it a little bit. Just to remember, back in the old days, we had these things where, we had to have to drive a stick shift. And if your starter conked out, you were able to start the car by getting it rolling and then jumping in and popping the clutch. But say you had to get the car rolling and you're pushing on your car. Initially, that car is not going to be moving very quick. But the longer you're able to push it, the more speed you're going to get. Now, you're not pushing with any more force when that car is moving faster. It's just you've got the momentum going and you're able to get it rolling. Now, that is essentially kind of the analogy. I'm using that analogy to kind of show why getting good forces produced early in your golf swing is important. So here we are, James, at peak vertical force. That is a great spot to be. Most amateurs, their peak vertical force happens down here at impact, and at that point, it's way too late. Way too late. PGA Tour players are usually about here. Long drivers are here and above. And again, that's the whole pushing the car thing. It just gives you more time to build that momentum to get that car rolling, so to get that club moving quicker. So let's just get him going through the swing to the end, and this is what I'm talking about, how well he just basically hits it just above the equator of the club head, which is where you actually want to hit it on a golf club. If you didn't know that about a driver, you get your best distance slightly above the center of the club head in the middle, and that will give you the most carry in the air and also the least amount of backspin at the same time. So you'll carry the furthest, and then when it hits the ground, it's going to roll out well because there's not a whole lot of backspin. So as you can see, he does that perfectly right there. Great impact position. He's pushing his upper body backwards, that braking force. I also like to call it a banking force. Like if you're driving fast, like on a racetrack, and you make a left turn, and that left turn is bank, it allows you to carry more speed through it. So that braking/banking force is very important in the golf swing. You're not sagging forward towards the target. You're actually pushing your body around, banking it to the left and back around. When I say to the left, that's for a right-hand golfer. So here he goes, got perfect contact there. Scroll through. You see how the left foot flies up in the air there and lands to the left of his target? That's a very common thing you're going to see amongst long drivers. And when I show other videos, that happens in almost every other video. He's produced so much force that his feet is essentially going to leave the ground. And if he kept his foot planted there, he may blow out his knee. So it's a preservation thing, but it's also the indicator of great ground forces. It's actually a great drill to do, to help you get those ground forces started earlier. Really feel it underneath your foot, and actually try to have that lead foot in the air, maybe even the lead and trail foot in the air as you're making contact. I mean, a great example of that is obviously Scotty Scheffler. Both of his feet are in the air. He does it differently than most long drivers. He's kind of moving forward towards the target while it's happening. A lot more than long drivers are. That's moving towards the target, but still producing a lot of ground force helps with accuracy as well as power. Moving away from the target at impact, that is definitely more of a power producer. But as you can see, James produces a heck of a lot of power, gets that front foot flying in the air, lands to the left. You can see how that trail leg is still torquing that force plate around, and yet he doesn't even seem to notice. He still center punches it. Perfectly balanced follow through with basically an ice skate under his right leg. Wrap around finish. That's just how great of an athlete he is, that he was able to still just do that essentially while standing in a boat in the water, kind of a thing. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, so that's James Tait. Again, number one long drive professional in Europe. We really don't see him much in the United States. If I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but I definitely want to get this in. We don't see him much in the United States. The only time we really ever see him is in September or October when we're at the World Championships. And during this time, during the World Championships, he's always competitive. He's always in the top 4 or 5. In 2023, he hit the longest ball in competition, probably about, I think it was like 456 yards, 455, something like that, about 20 yards longer than any other ball that week. So he's definitely, he's a guy who could in any year win the World Long Drive Championship. And on top of that, a super nice person, very welcoming, very, he'll share knowledge with you, he'll help you out. Easy to approach. I would definitely check out his channel, Bunkered Golf, YouTube channel. You can look up his name, James Tait, on Instagram and Facebook. Bunkered Golf, I think, is also on Facebook. So definitely give those channels a look. And thanks for checking out my channel. And we'll be back soon with more analysis. Thanks. Bye.